So anyway, I don't know. Performance, stream quality is fine. I'll just keep an eye on it. Uh, I wanted to do some lore discussion. What I was kind of thinking was we would check out some of these videos that I've watched. Maybe you've watched them. Right there's an honored madman, which he's really good for this kind of stuff. Sorry, I've watched so much lore and like stuff on it that it's hard for me to find the specifics, and I don't rightly remember who it was, but I will know when I see it because I've watched it. There's gonna be a lot of music in here because I play a lot, and it's honestly Honored Madman makes some really good stuff. You know, like it's not bad. Um, I would check out some of his stuff. I'm trying to remember which one was the most interesting. I mean, they're all interesting. I think that he's pretty thorough and has some pretty interesting theories. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I'd say check him out. We might just watch his Glintstone Crown one if I can't find the ones I'm looking for. Basically, the whole idea behind the stream is, well, first of all, I didn't really feel like playing games, or I didn't really feel like, or really like doing anything other than just sitting here, you know. But I got a stream. Oh, I need to watch that. I don't think it's a good idea to react to somebody's review, right? I should probably read the manga first. Dude, I swear I'm sorry, but like I just come into these things like it's like a wild hair in my ass. Like, oh, I should try that out. See how it goes. And then I'm stuck. I've seen like the same like music video thumbnails like 3 or 4 times now, so we're just gonna fucking look it up. I'm sure I'll find it better this way. Oh, I should. Okay, there's one. There's me right there. Look at that. I would. Is it Angel of the Past? I've watched it. 56 minutes. That's the one. I also need to add this to watch later too. Yo, if you guys haven't checked out Honored Madman, I'd recommend it. Um, sorry, that's like the third or fourth time I plugged that dude. I really like his content though, so it is what it is. Anyway, I'm hoping that I get the playback in my headset. Fucking A, rights I do.
Redfall used to look like it was straight out of a postcard.
I don't give a shit about Redfall. Okay, so I do have to pull something up. I just want to make sure that the way I understand before we get too far into this, really. Was it overhyped? Let's read this article real quick. And then we'll see, because the way I understood it is that I thought that he just did the world building, which is obviously like there's a lot of history that you go into when you do world building, like specific events. Like I'm sure he had a part in all of that, but the way I thought I understood it was a lot of it was just like the mythos, kind of just the background, because all of the stuff that's presented to the character, like item descriptions and how the lore is fed to you, I feel like would not be something that he would do specifically, right? So maybe he had like this great world built, and then FromSoft came and just sprinkled their little fucking touch of magic in there. But okay, so let's just make sure. Okay, so it says right here that he did not write the plot. Detailed his thoughts surrounding initial pitch. According to Martin, Miyazaki asked him to only build the then upcoming game's backstory and history. So I feel like he's probably responsible for coming up with stuff like the shattering and all that. But as far as like when you're doing world building, you only like touch on things. You don't really go into the full details. Kind of leaves it a mystery. I feel like I don't know. I'm not like the best writer around or anything. I enjoy writing. So he worked on the fictional history. So I would assume this goes from everywhere from like talking about the mythos and the outer gods and all that stuff, and kind of condensing it into this world building thing that they used to write out the plot, fill in the gaps. So he created the characters too. So maybe he had enough of an influence on it. But it also says that they kind of took a different direction once they got that information. So the reason why I'm looking at this is because there were a couple of lore videos that I came across that kind of rely heavily on the aspect that this is a world created by George R. Martin, and so that there's some weird stuff going on, which I don't put that past From Software to put some weird shit in their games anyway. But
what if I told you I
okay,
could answer all of
let's
these
just
questions, or that the answers are much more fantastical?
we'll just skip around.
While the story is
I've watched
compelling
this
on its
already,
own,
so I kind of
it's
know the
thanks
idea.
to FromSoft working tirelessly to bring us a game that can convey the story at the highest quality, regardless of what salty developers have to say.
Oh, that shit's
This
hilarious.
is not From's first Soulsborne game, it's their 7th. And while I personally have some issues with the game... Wait, 2 of them? Why are these things so fucking deadly? Got you little shits. Those complaints don't detract from the
Dude,
credibility.
More people die to dumb shit like falling off of things than they do to actual bosses, I swear. That's the funny thing about the game. Like it's hard, or like FromSoft games in general, but when they have the weird platforming shit where you're like, I have to line this up perfectly, you just get wrecked. Like, especially like I've been playing since Dark Souls 1, and I have a method to the madness. Like if it looks like you'll make it, scoot over a little bit just to be sure. It's funny. Anyway, so
compare that to
I'm just gonna like cliff notes this section real quick. Basically, what he's saying is that like the way FromSoft tells the story is not just through the item descriptions and dialogue, but also through like environmental storytelling. So it's like, why do you find this item in this area? Kind of shit. That's kind of the whole gist of it. And that's a thing that if you watch any YouTube like FromSoft lore creator, those are questions that they'd ask anyway. But we're gonna jump ahead to a hidden history because that's kind of where we want to be. At least this section, this whole video, it's actually not a bad lore video. I really respect the work that went into it. I mean, this is a fucking hour-long video, and this guy, I should just sub to him because he did the he asks good questions. He's got some pretty decent theories, but the main thing is like he wanted to like do this before he watched any other lore videos so that his ideas wouldn't be swayed one way or another. I kind of appreciate that. There's no way I could have sat around and waited to make a lore video if I was into it. Like, first of all, you have to read a lot of item descriptions. And then you have to see where you find these items, see why it's important, understand like what is fed to you throughout the game through that stuff, and it just seems like such a long process that I don't think I could fully dive into, I guess, but it doesn't matter. Let's watch this.
Like most FromSoft games, most of the action of the world happened well before you put the disc in. However, there needs to be a distinction made before we start this timeline, and it's an important one. The lore of this game isn't the standard lore of a FromSoft game. While the dialogue, text descriptions, and character interactions you see in the game are from FromSoft, and therefore need to be understood from a FromSoft perspective, the lore of the world is a George R.R. Martin creation. The reason for this important distinction is because when breaking down the hidden aspects of a story, we rely on imagining what the person writing it would be thinking when they put forward the scenario we are reading.
Okay.
Normally,
See, these are the only things that I have like a little bit of a nag about. Is like we just looked it up. he wrote the world history, not like the fine details, and then FromSoft took and twisted what was written in that to fit the narrative of a game, right? Like we kind of just read that how they took all these heroes of the game and turned them into grotesque monsters so that they would be bosses for the Tarnished to fight. So we know that there was some freedom of the world history from what Martin produced to what FromSoft gave us. So I think the idea of relying on like looking at his past works and what the writer was thinking while doing this should be kind of like a grain of salt thing and not necessarily something to kind of stick your to cement your ideas on. But
Game that
we'll
means
keep watching.
understanding what Miyazaki would make happen in this scenario. Now it means understanding what George R. Martin would do. So basically, way more family relations. When you start the
Now,
game, you're thrown in the middle of nowhere.
I could see how this would fit
waiting
in.
lists.
I don't
The
think
only thing you
FromSoft's
know
too
is
far
that you're
from
supposed to get the
being
Elden Ring. But what
from doing
is
stuff
the
like
Elden
that,
Ring?
but
Why do you need to get it? During
you
this
just
time?
chunk so
America,
hard
a
with
new
that
moon
weapon.
arrives. America receives the Elden Beast's power in the form of the Elden Ring. She contains it inside of her and becomes the goddess.
Bloodhound's
of the lands
Fang
between.
is just
The Erd
phenomenal.
Tree is planted and becomes a symbol of
For
the
how
Gold
early you
Order.
get it,
And
for it to be
Farron
able to carry
Azula
you to
gets
the end game
placed
like
in the
that is
center of the continent and
unreal.
floats to the east in a maelstrom of wind. I do not know if it was
Okay,
America.
we're looking
Azula,
for
or
something
because
specific.
There when it was deployed.
You know, that part of the game I just don't even fuck with. Like, if I really want to do Vare's quest, I will not go up to the Church of Inhibition. I know you get, like, you fight Vike, and I think you get his spear. And you can find some madness-related stuff up there, and that's where you get the blood of the maiden. And I believe there's a sacred tear up there, if I'm not mistaken. Which that alone is worth going up there for, but dealing with the madness, the frenzied flame on the fucking tower. You guys know the whole like debate about Radagon as Marika? Like there's like a couple of theories about it, like because throughout the game you just hear it's like Radagon as Marika. There's the whole thing with Gold Mask, but you're trying to figure out. I mean this guy talks about it, but like, how does that work? Like, Ronnie, Rykard, and Radon are all still demigod because Radagon was the daddy. But like, the question is like, how does that work? I guess. And I'm sorry if I'm rambling here. It's just I'm trying to like piece together thoughts as I go here. My thought is that America can do this sort of like projection thing that Morgott, I guess, and Moog can do. You know, we fight Morgott a couple of times before we get to the capital, and then we can fight Moog in the sewers before we fight him in the Blood Temple. So it's kind of like that's obviously an ability of some sort that can go there. Also, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think that this version of the boss is resistant to a lot of shit. Yeah, so strong against fire, immune to all status effects, but the real version is actually weak to blood loss, despite being the Lord of Blood. And you can actually give him status effects. So I think that's a cool like little nod to what these are. Like maybe they're just physical projections, kind of like how in it's not the Force Awakens. What the fuck is it? The Last Jedi. When Luke projects himself across the universe, like he's not a physical projection, but like it's kind of like that. Of course, these guys don't have to project across a fucking galaxy or whatever, but okay, so he's strong versus those. That's interesting. Their projection has certain resistances because it's not their actual body. That's the point I'm trying to make. So they're only strong to holy and sleep. They're not like weak to anything else. And if we look at it, actually the hemorrhage I think might be lower. 316 is it still 3? Oh, it's higher actually. So I guess the whole point of going through that is like maybe Radagon. This guy has a pretty cool theory too that I also kind of subscribe to. But the one that I think might be the most likely is that while Radagon was just like a physical projection of Marika, but to be like a figurehead of the Golden Order, you know, like it's just this badass warrior that people look up to and be like
No
kind of
longer
a
will
morale
be.
thing, I would
Ronnie
say.
would study under the.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
where
the
I
one.
said that understanding the author of the story matters. While little things like this can happen in Miyazaki's story, family fracturings have deep meaning in George R.R. Martin's works. I believe Godfrey discovered that Mog and Morgoth weren't Marika and his children, although they were his blood. I believe they were Marika and Godwin's children. This plays into what I had spoken about earlier. I think Godfrey discovered that Marika had been conceiving children with their son, and he was banished because of it. Godwin could act as Marika during her absence as Radigan, which will be very important later, so note that I believe Godwin can take the form of Marika. But once Godfrey was sent away, she would be needed more than ever, so she came back immediately. This marks the start of our next phase in the timeline, the downfall of the Golden Order. Radigan is back in the capital.
Okay, so the whole that's I stopped a little late, but so Godwin and Marika giving birth to cursed children because they're like first of all their blood, like that I word family relations that he was talking about. I kind of dig that theory. I'm not gonna lie. I think it makes sense because there's no real other explanation as to why when Godfrey and Marika's first child is Godwin, who's just like the golden child basically, to going to having two cursed children. And I think that there is a I don't want to use the word dichotomy because I don't actually really know what that means, but let's just no, it's not. It's not that. Let's just basically you could draw a line of similarities between Moog and Morgoth, which I believe are twins. I it would make sense for them to be twins because Mikola and Melania are twins, right? Oh shit. Okay, so let's just see. There's probably like a little bit of lore trivia here. See, this is why I haven't done it because I have to just go make sure I understand things, and it would just take way too long. It's the twin brother of Moog. Yeah, okay. It's crazy. There's speculation in this note here that says he turns to gold dust during Godfrey's introduction, likely symbolizing that he has returned to the Erd Tree, which I think would be really cool.
Is Elden Lord, and he and Marika.
I should say though, the whole point is that it seems like I fucking get on tangents so often, dude. Especially when I don't have anything like written down. The whole idea for me is that there is a connection between Morgoth and Moog, Melania and Mikola. For a number of reasons. First of all, they're both twins, which makes me like if we were to get like scientific about it, and I don't know shit about science, it makes me think that like this twin gene is something that is part of America. She's had two sets of twins. And if we follow the theory that Godwin is the father of Morgoth and Moog, then it leads some credence to the fact that like her her basically banging herself to have Mikola and Melania, and then seeing that they have like similar defects, they're not as cursed as the Omen, because the Omen weren't even considered Empyreans. Also, there's the naming convention. If you notice that, so there's Godwin, who's the son of Godfrey. Moog and Morgoth both have the M, and that's kind of shares with Mikola and Melania, which makes you kind of wonder, right? Maybe Moog and Morgoth aren't actually Godfrey's children. But it's possible that she could got the slip. Maybe she pulled the whole Radagon cover over, or maybe it was Godwyn, whatever, and that's why she has fucked up kids like Morgoth and Moog, but not as physically jacked up as Melania or Mikola. They have their own respective curses, and they're kind of rough to deal with, I'm sure. But like being born looking like that and in prison for a long time's gotta suck. I just think there's some similarities there, like especially with the naming convention. Like you look at all of Renala and Radagon's children, they all start with R's. Even and you could say that's because of Renala, but also Radagon was starts with an R too. So it's just the naming convention seems to match with who the important parent is, I would say. And so in the case of Godwyn, it's obviously Godfrey's child. He was like the golden child. He's like almost perfect, I guess. We don't know a lot. That's kind of the way it's set up to be. Moog and Morgoth are kind of weird. They should have definitely had the naming convention of G's if they were or Godfrey's children. And then you have the triple R, the R stack of Rykard, Radon, and Ronnie, all Radagon's kids, and then Mikola and Melania are both Marika's. The whole idea, the whole thing there is it's just like they're obviously doing a play on like with the naming convention with having that start with the right letter, and so I think it's kind of silly to overlook that, and I think it gives a little bit of credence to what this guy's saying about Godwyn being the actual parent of Morgoth and Moog. So you wouldn't, if you were naming it after your consort or using that naming convention, then why would they be M's and not G's? Probably because we don't need another Guinevere or Gwendolyn, but whatever. We have a Godwyn and a Mogwyn, I guess. I think I've talked about a lot of the things I want to talk about. I agree with some of this stuff. I think you guys should come check out this video if you're interested in it. It's doing pretty well for a lore video that's almost an hour long. I mean, that's just how it goes. There was another one that I started to watch. It's a little bit shorter. We could probably get through it, but I'd have to find it. Oh, right. But there's another thing that I wanted to talk about. We can come back to the George R. R. Martin thing in a little bit, but you guys hear the theory that Melina might actually be well, she speaks about Marika as though it's her mother. And so I'm curious about whether or not it just gets deeper and deeper. I don't know how to explain it. She's got the naming convention that falls in line with Morgoth, Moog, Melania, and Mikola. She's got a name close to Melania. And she must be one of the youngest demigods. Or maybe she was birthed from the Ur tree after the Shattering, or during the Shattering, to guide. And actually, let's kind of talk about that for a second. This is kind of just an idea. What if Melina was created just to be a finger maiden, so to speak? Because there's obviously an issue with other Tarnished following their maiden and not wanting to sacrifice them. They care too much about them. And the maiden, while they believe it's their duty, are still, I guess, like human in a way. They're not like gods. Their purpose can be diluted, so to speak, by outside sources. Like they don't have that sense of devotion, I guess. And so maybe Marika felt it was necessary to birth Melina to lead a Tarnish where she's like not with you constantly. I mean, she kind of is. She comes in and out, but like her sole purpose is making sure that a new Elden Lord is chosen, type of thing. And if she was born after the Shattering, that's why she wouldn't have a Great Rune. She wouldn't really have a need for it if her purpose is just to lead the Tarnished to the mountaintops of giants to rekindle that flame. I know that's kind of just like harebrained and like super like condensed. Probably the shortest thing I've talked about since starting the stream. But well, not me and my pals. Mostly just me. I was just kind of on the side of she's bloomed 3 times, or when we fight her, it's her third bloom. See, this is right here is where I have the problem. God felled. The only time you see a god felled in game. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I'm still. My hair is still fucked. Dude, I brushed it and everything. Every time I put the fucking headphones on, I've got an image to maintain, you know what I mean? My bad. Okay, Jesus Christ, where were we? Okay. So you guys should let me know what you think about Melania and how many times you think she bloomed. If you play, it's fine if you're just checking it out right now. I'm not trying. So they're seeing it's actually a really close vote. Only off by about 14, and that's only 78 people have came to this, despite it does it not tell me how many upvotes it's got. 4. Okay, so anyway, and these are old. These are before the patch. They actually fixed the patch in the last one of the last patches. They actually made it to where it says demigod felled. Now, the only issue I have about this ascend to godhood is that you can be a demigod and not be technically a god. It's kind of like the same situation with Hercules, how he became the god of strength, but he's not a full-blooded god. So, what my issue with this is there's only one time we fight a god where we get this title after we beat it, and that's the Elden Beast. It's not Radagon, it's the Elden Beast. Radagon is the first phase of that fight. We fight the Elden Beast, we get a remembrance for the Elden Beast. We might be able to make a weapon out of that remembrance, but it's not a Radagon remembrance, it's the Elden Beast. I think it's just really important to make that distinction, because she would not be an outer god. She would not be something that is not of this world that is coming and like making changes. Maybe the actual rock god was an outer god, but it got sealed away. This is not. This I don't think actually really proves anything in terms of actual concrete evidence to prove that she's not technically a god. And here's why. If you go to Caelid, you'll find a couple of different types of enemies. They're called the denizens of rot. They're these like guys that shoot poison like spells at you. And then there's the kindred of rot, which are those guys that shoot the pest threads. They, if I'm not mistaken, actually worship the rock god or the rock goddess, and I think that that's speaking in relation to Melania. So let's look up a kindred of rot. Okay, my bad. That's a field boss. Seathwater Cave. I want to get to... I don't really care. No. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't have looked up Kindred of Rot. They worship the rot itself, so when you have a demigod that is seething with rot, you would think that they would probably worship them. Come on. Denizen. Isn't it an Elden Ring thing? I thought that there are people that worship specifically the rot, but I wanted to see if there was something. Dude, nobody ever has anything. And there's just no information about him. They don't drop their spear either, so I guess there's not really a way to read about it. Anyway, these servants rot. Okay, let's just back up a second because I'm still a little confused. We're gonna watch Melania. We're gonna see what some of these like poppin' ones say, and then we'll go and find somebody who's not as popping. Like this one is misunderstood. I bet he actually has some really good info for 9 minutes. I've watched it, but I don't remember it. Anyway, when you go to the Halig tree, there are kindreds of rot there. I'm not sure if there's servants of rot. I don't think so. At least not close to where you fight Melania. There's an entire church. There's a lot of kindred of rot, so obviously they worship her specifically as their god. I would assume that's what that means, since they're congregating at Michaelis Halig tree. That's kind of my thought on the matter. So even though she's a demigod, she is still considered a god by some of the inhabitants of the lands between. There's no doubt about that. So the fact that, and also nobody wants to bring up the fact that nobody wants to bring up the fact that she's literally called the goddess of rot in her second phase. That doesn't count for anything. It's just because she's not considered a god when you kill her. So the idea is that she's only bloomed twice. I'm under the impression that she's bloomed 3 times right before the boss. I think it might be for like a Scarlet Valkyrie though, since you find Millicent's clothing there, but Millicent doesn't bloom there. Millicent blooms where the ulcerated tree spirit is, before the drainage channel side of Grace. So that's not Millicent. It could be one of her sisters. I'm not denying that fact. And I think that, you know, we don't actually see the real bloom from the fight with Radon. We just see the tree that grew in its place. So I think there's a lot of things that go against the 2 blooms theory. For one, that bloom is the Scarlet Aeonia. That's the spell. But that's what happens when she blooms, and she not only does that happen in the cutscene, but she uses that move right after that. So she's definitely at 3 blooms regardless. It's fair to assume that she's the goddess of rot. I think that in order for you to have the Godfeld title, you have to be like the vassal of an outer god. I think that makes sense. I think that you can still be considered a god in a world where people worship you. So I think, assuming that because nothing came up, or now that it's fixed it says demigod, I think that they put those titles in as a relation to who the major bosses are. And as a demigod, you're half god at least, so it makes sense because that's her relationship to Marika. There's also the fact that she does bloom after the fight as well, which leads me to believe that she is not a character that we actually kill. I think that we beat her and take her Great Rune, but we don't actually kill her. I think that there are some things that this game does where it kind of leads you to believe that you're not actually killing some of these bosses, like Malekith. You just defeat him and claim Destined Death, but he's also Geraint, and he's still in Dragon Barrow. So, I think, same with Margit, or Morgott, he's still alive after you beat him the second time, at least until Godfrey shows up. And just because you beat Radagon, Marika's still alive, and we know they're the same person. So, what I want to do is, see, there's this. Yeah, see, this is what I was just talking about. Yeah, you can assume that first bloom in the room before Melania's is actually okay.
Kyrian Mikola is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. We can take from this that Mikola was either gifted at manipulating others or was genuinely good-natured in his intentions. And what I've come to believe is that the latter is true, as Mikola created the Halig tree partially out of love for his sister Melania. We learn from
Yeah, Mikola just sounds like an all-around great guy. Everything we hear about him, he's trying to sway the influence of the outer gods, which is kind of problematic. I mean, the effect it had on Marika herself is evidence of the fact that they're really just using, like, the god, like, Marika and her children as pawns in their game, and I can understand why being a child of said god would make you kind of want to be like, nah, dude, I'm not really into that. That's why Ronnie did what she did, right? She doesn't want to be controlled by this thing that's not even present. You know, it's an outer god. They're from the cosmos.
Mikola, Melania, and the Holic Tree also appear to have inspired devotion and loyalty in their followers.
I also wonder if I wonder if it just wasn't. It had to have not been a priority. I feel like the priority for America was just to be like to hold up the golden order, to keep things going as it were, not to worry about these like. It just seems like there's a huge disregard for children. Like